The alien court was full of laughter, not the kind that made you smile, but the cold kind, the cruel kind. They were all laughing at one girl. Her name was Nila, and she stood in the center of the hall. Head bowed, the elders had chosen her. Not for honor, not for respect. They had chosen her to be sent away to a human, as a joke. Humans were seen as strange and soft by many alien worlds. Some called them dangerous, others called them dirty. But these aliens, Nila's people, thought they were below them. So when a peace treaty had to be signed with a human colony, the council made a cruel plan. Let us give the human a bride. The head elder had said with a smile. Let it be the weakest among us, said another. The hall had roared with laughter. And Nila had been brought forward. She had no family, no power, no voice in the tribe. She was easy to send away. Nobody cared if she came back. But when she looked up, her eyes were not angry. They were calm, still, and strange, something inside. Her head not broken. The ship that took her was old, and the guards joked the whole way. She won't last a week with him, one said. She'll cry and beg to return, said another. But Nila stayed quiet, watching stars pass through the windows when they landed on the human world. She was pushed out of the ship like trash. The guards pointed to a small cabin nearby and said, There, that's your husband now. She walked slowly across the rocky ground. The wind was strong, carrying the smell of trees and fire. The cabin was small but neat, smoke curling from the chimney. And then she saw him, the human. He stepped out from the wooden door, wiping his hands on his shirt. He was tall, strong, but there was no anger in his face. His name was Jack. Jack looked at her like she was real, not like trash, not like a joke. He didn't laugh. You must be cold, he said. Come in. That was it. No questions. No loud voice, no cruel eyes. He gave her a blanket and sat by the fire, leaving space for her. Nila didn't speak. She had been trained to stay quiet, to be useful, to not hope. But something felt different in that room. Jack cooked food, simple, but warm, and gave her the bigger plate. She had never eaten like that before. In her world, even food had been part of the joke. But here, the joke was missing. That night, she waited. She thought he might force her, or command her to do something strange. Instead, he placed a mat near the fire and said, You can take the bed. I'll sleep here. She blinked, confused. Why? She asked softly, her voice small from years of silence. Jack shrugged. You've come a long way, he said. You should rest. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. She lay in the bed, still wearing the rough travel cloak. She watched the fire, listened to Jack's soft breathing, and for the first time in many years, she didn't feel afraid outside. The night was quiet, but far above, orbiting in a hidden ship, her people watched. They expected her to fail, to be laughed at again, but they didn't see what Nila had seen. The human was not what they expected. And neither was she. Something inside her had changed. Not because of a kiss or a sweet word, but because for once in her life, someone had looked at her like she mattered. The joke had started with her, but something told her this was not going to end the way they planned, not at all. The morning light touched her face like a whisper. Nila opened her eyes slowly, confused by the softness beneath her. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the wooden ceiling, the quiet room, the faint smell of cooked meat still in the air, and she remembered. The human hadn't touched her, hadn't yelled, hadn't locked her in chains. He had given her the bed, and he had taken the floor. She sat up slowly and saw him still asleep near the fire. His chest moved gently, rising and falling, peaceful like an old mountain. His boots were near the door, his coat folded on a chair. Nothing in this place felt like a trap. She walked quietly outside, the door creaking just a little. The air was cold but fresh, filled with the scent of green things and wind. A small animal stared at her from a tree, then ran off without fear. Even the world here didn't look at her like a mistake. Nila stood there for a long time. She was trying to feel scared, but her body didn't listen. Her heart was unsure, confused, like it didn't know what to protect itself from anymore. She turned back and entered the cabin. Jack was awake now, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. He looked at her and gave a soft smile, not forced, just real. "Morning," he said simply. She nodded once. Her voice caught in her throat. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked, standing up. She didn't answer, but when he handed her a piece of warm bread, she took it gently. They ate in silence. The only sound was the fire crackling. It wasn't uncomfortable silence, though. It was something else, safe, calm, maybe even kind. He began cleaning the small table, moving slowly so she wouldn't feel rushed. She watched him quietly, the way his hands worked, steady and careful. There was no pride in his movements, no show. Just a man doing simple work with quiet strength. "You don't have to do anything," he said suddenly, not looking at her. She blinked, unsure what he meant. "I mean, they sent you here," he continued, "but I didn't ask for a bride." He turned toward her then. "So if you want to stay, you can, and if you want to leave, I won't stop you." That sentence hit her harder than any insult. She had always been treated like property, like something given away and forgotten. But now, for the first time, someone said she could choose. No one had ever said that to her. Not even once. She wanted to speak, but her voice failed again. So instead, she sat down near the fire and stayed. It was her answer, simple and clear. The next few days passed slowly. Jack worked in the fields and around the house. He never asked questions, never tried to touch her. He only showed her how things worked, how to chop wood, how to start the fire, how to clean the tools. She followed his lead, watching more than speaking. They moved like shadows beside each other, learning the rhythm of quiet living. It was strange, peaceful, but not empty. Each day, a little more fear melted from her bones. One evening, he handed her a small box. Inside was a soft cloth dress, plain but warm. "I figured you might want something different than that travel cloak," he said. She touched the fabric carefully, her fingers shaking just a little. She looked up at him, and he looked away quickly, pretending not to notice her watery eyes. That night, she wore the dress and stood by the fire a little longer than usual. He glanced at her once and smiled again. No words were needed. The silence said enough. Far above, in the dark sky, her people still watched from the hidden ship. They waited for the report that never came. They expected tears, shame, failure, but all they saw was stillness, small moments. Two lives slowly threading together. They didn't understand it. They couldn't measure it or control it, but something was happening, and it didn't follow their plan. Neela had been sent as a joke, but each day she stayed, each silent moment she shared, she was becoming something else, something even she didn't understand yet. She didn't fear the human anymore. Now she feared what she was starting to feel for him. The scream of metal woke Ethan before the sun could rise. It came from deep within the forest, not loud but sharp, like something landing where it shouldn't. He grabbed the old weapon from the shelf, its barrel dusty but still deadly. Then he looked at the bedroom door where Zara was still asleep, breathing slow and steady under thick blankets. She didn't know yet, but something had arrived, and he had a terrible feeling it wasn't friendly. Outside, the wind had died down, but the trees were shaking. Ethan moved quietly through the snow, following the faint trail of heat left behind by something not natural. After 15 minutes, he found it, a small alien scout drone, half buried under broken branches. Still warm, still powered, he raised the weapon, aimed at it, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. It exploded with a soft pop, like glass under pressure. Whatever it had recorded was gone now. But if that was the scout, then something bigger was coming behind it. Back at the cabin, Zara stood on the porch, her eyes already fixed on the smoke rising through the trees. She didn't ask questions, not yet. Ethan placed the weapon down by the door and met her gaze. "They're here, aren't they?" she said, her voice flat and cold. He nodded. "One of them, at least." Zara stepped inside, went to the table, and picked up a small piece of metal she had hidden there. It was part of the tracker she had crushed, but now it had meaning. She turned it in her hand like a coin, thinking, remembering. Preparing. They won't stop, she whispered. They think this is still a joke. Ethan poured water into the kettle, not knowing what else to do. Then we show them it's not funny anymore, he said, before they could speak again. The cabin shook slightly, just once, like something heavy had landed nearby. Zara's hand went to her waist, a reflex from training she was never supposed to have used. Ethan picked up the weapon again and moved to the window. A shadow passed just outside, tall and silent. Moving like it owned the ground, it stepped. On, then a knock, hard and firm, 3 times. Zara stood completely still. She knew that rhythm. It was from the military zone, a command pattern used by scouts and collectors. They had sent someone to take her back. Ethan moved to open the door, but she stopped him with a hand on his chest. I have to do this, she said. They'll see weakness if you answer. He stepped aside, unsure, worried, but trusting. Her instincts now more than his own, she opened the door slowly, and there stood a tall alien in black armor, his eyes glowing white under a sharp helmet. He didn't speak first, just looked her up and down like he was weighing meat. Then he said in a deep voice, You've had your fun, Zara. The council wants their joke back. She didn't answer, just stared at him. He stepped forward, but she blocked the doorway with her body. I'm not going with you, she said. The armored figure laughed, but it was dry and without joy. This was never your choice, he replied, reaching out to grab her arm. But Ethan fired. The blast hit the ground beside the armored man's foot, sending up a spray of snow and smoke. Next one's between your eyes, Ethan said, stepping into view. The alien looked at him like he was dirt, like he didn't matter. But now, things had changed. The human was no longer part of the joke. He had drawn a line in real fire. The scout took one step back, then another. He looked at Zara, anger in his voice now. You've gone native, she stared him down. I've found something better than you ever offered, with one last glare. The armored scout stepped into the trees and vanished. But they both knew it wasn't over. This was just a warning. Next time, they would send more than one. Zara closed the door slowly, turned, and looked at Ethan. He put the weapon back on the table, but his hands were shaking slightly. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did, he replied. Because you're not going back with them. She stared at him for a long time, then said something she hadn't said since she arrived. Thank you. Outside, far above the snow-covered trees, a silent ship hovered, watching everything. Inside it, voices argued. Some demanded force. Others whispered that something was wrong with her. She's been changed, one said, corrupted by the human. No, said another. She's evolving. The storm had passed, but something colder had taken its place. It wasn't the wind or the snow. It was silence, the kind that wraps around you like a warning. Zara stood in the doorway, staring into the empty forest. Her eyes narrow and still. Nothing moved, and that was the problem. The scouts had vanished, but not because they gave up. They were waiting, calculating, watching. Inside the cabin, Ethan worked with tools he barely understood, trying to repair an old satellite dish on the table. It was the only way to reach the outside worlds, but its core was cracked, useless. I can't fix this, he muttered. They really left me out here to rot. Zara stepped in, still holding the half-burned metal chip from the destroyed drone. She placed it gently beside the broken dish. Use this, she said. It has a clean lens. Ethan looked at her, surprised, then took it with care. You sure? He asked. She nodded. It won't track us anymore. I destroyed the signal layer. For a few hours, they worked side by side. Ethan handed her tools. She showed him how to rewire alien tech with human parts. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow their strange mix of pieces formed a heartbeat again. The screen blinked once, then turned blue. A signal was ready. Ethan was about to activate it, to call for help, when Zara grabbed his hand. Wait, she whispered. What if they answer instead? He paused, eyes locked on hers. The meaning was clear. If they used the signal, her people might find them first. And this time, they might not knock at the door. This time, they might burn the house down. Then we need to leave before nightfall, Ethan said, his voice firm. There's an old outpost in the hills, solar-powered, unused since the last trade run. He stood up, went to pack supplies, but Zara didn't move, not right away. She stared at the blinking blue light and whispered under her breath, "They'll come for more than just me now." By sunset, the cabin was dark, the fire put out, and their footprints already half covered by snow. They walked in silence through the trees, bags over their backs, weapons hidden but ready. The forest stretched endlessly, and the sky above burned red like it had seen blood. Zara walked ahead, her steps sure and fast, like someone who had marched in formation before. Ethan followed. Close behind, trusting her eyes more than the map in his hand. Suddenly she stopped. Hand raised, Ethan froze, in the distance. Up ahead near the frozen ridge stood a figure, unmoving, not armored, not a scout. It looked like a woman, tall, pale, eyes glowing soft blue in the dark. Zara whispered, "It's a mirror." Ethan didn't understand, but she stepped forward slowly, weapon out but low. "Who sent you?" she asked, her voice low, steady. The woman didn't speak instead. She turned and walked away, not through snow, but over it. Her feet didn't leave a mark. Zara stared, her breath catching in her throat. "They've sent a mimic," she said. "They want to see what I'll do." They didn't follow it. They turned sharply west, changing their path, but the forest no longer felt safe. Everything had eyes, even the trees, even the wind. This was no longer Earth as Ethan knew it. It had become a playground for someone else's game. When they finally reached the old outpost, it was half buried in snow, walls cracked, roof covered in vines. Still, it held power, a faint glow blinking. From under the panel, inside, Zara collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but awake. Ethan checked every corner, every ceiling, every pipe for bugs or drones. He found none, but he still felt watched. That night, Zara sat by the old window, staring up at the stars. She didn't speak for a long time, then finally said, "If I told you why they really sent me, you'd think less of me." Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at her, saw the weight she carried in her shoulders, in her silence. "You were their joke," he said. "But that doesn't mean you're not real." She turned to him, and for the first time, her voice cracked. "They didn't think I was good enough to be a soldier, or a scholar, or a leader. They thought I was small, weak, empty, someone who'd come crawling back. They wanted to humiliate me by sending me to a species they considered dirty and wild." Ethan's face didn't change. "They picked the wrong human then," he said. "Because I don't care about their joke. I only care about what you do next." Zara didn't smile, not yet, but something inside her shifted. She turned her eyes back to the stars and whispered, "I'm going to make them regret ever." Laughing at me, and far above, in the council chamber of her homeworld, the general stared at a flickering screen in silence. The mimic had returned empty. The drone was offline, and now, the girl they mocked was no longer alone, one whispered. "She will be trouble," another replied. "Then we'll send fire." The sky turned black too fast. It didn't fade like it used to. It just dropped, like a curtain yanked by unseen hands. Zara stood at the edge of the old outpost, staring up at the darkness. The stars were missing, covered by something too large to be seen clearly. It wasn't a cloud. It wasn't a storm. It was a ship, and it was theirs. She stepped back into the outpost, where Ethan was packing what little they had into small bags. She didn't say a word, but he saw the look on her face and knew. "They've come down," he said quietly. She nodded once, slow and cold. "This time they didn't send scouts," she said. "This time they came to take me." Ethan picked up his weapon, but Zara placed her hand over his. "They won't ask," she said. "They'll just burn." Outside, a low hum filled the air. like metal grinding against sky. The ground vibrated under their feet, and a deep blue light washed over the trees. The ship wasn't landing, it was scanning. They were searching for heat, breath, movement, any sign of life. And if they found it, they'd strike. Zara ran to the old panel and shut down every power source in the outpost. The lights died, the hum faded, the signal went quiet. They stood in pure silence, only the sound of their hearts in their ears. One mistake and they'd be ashes. The scan beam passed over them twice, slow and precise. Ethan held his breath for so long his chest began to ache. Then finally, it moved away, and the sound faded. They had been missed, or ignored, or spared, but not for long. Zara dropped to her knees, breathing hard. "This isn't a hunt," she said. "It's a message. They know we're alive. But they want us to run." Ethan crouched beside her, confused. "Why would they wait if they want you gone?" Zara's voice was low, like a whisper meant only for the wind. "Because they want me to come back ashamed. If they kill me, I become a martyr. But if I crawl back, defeated, their joke becomes complete again." Ethan stared at her, then asked, "So what now?" She looked at him with eyes sharper than before. "Now I make them regret ever thinking I was a joke." The next morning, they left the outpost behind. They traveled west toward a place Ethan once heard about, a human-claimed mining base. Deep inside the mountain ridges, long abandoned, but still rich in parts and hidden signals. It was a place humans built when they feared war with Zara's people. And now, that fear might become a shield. The journey was hard, cold, and full of silence. They didn't talk much, but each step brought them closer. Not just to safety, but to a decision. At one point, Ethan stopped and looked at her. "You're stronger than them," he said. "You don't need to hide anymore." She didn't answer, just kept walking. But inside, something burned, something new and frightening. Not fear, not shame, hope, and hope was dangerous when you came from a world that laughed at you. By the third day, they reached the ridge. The base was buried under snow and rock, but the beacon still blinked in silence. Zara entered the access code from memory. It worked. The doors opened slowly, and a warm current of recycled air greeted them. They stepped into the dark metal halls like ghosts returning home. Inside, they found what they needed: old communication. Tech, ancient shields, power cores, fragments of war that never came. But they also found something else. A message, half broken, but still clear. It was a transmission from the generals. Meant for their operatives, it read, "If she resists, destroy the human, retrieve the body, and erase all signs of contact." Ethan read it, then looked at her. "So that's the plan," he said. "They don't just want you to fail. They want me gone." Zara's face went blank. Then hard. "Then they'll get neither," she said. "No failure and no corpse." She turned to the console, fingers moving fast. She started building something. Not a message, not a call for help. A broadcast, open and loud. Her face would be on every screen in orbit, in every hidden scout's receiver. She would speak directly to the people who laughed, to the ones who thought she would break. Ethan stepped back and watched. She didn't look afraid anymore. She looked like someone ready to burn down the sky. And as the transmitter hummed to life, Zara said just one thing before going live. "They sent me as a joke, but they forgot that humans don't laugh when someone they care about is threatened." The broadcast went out like thunder under calm water, silent at first, unnoticed, then spreading fast through channels no one thought still worked. Zara's face appeared across hidden receivers and forgotten relays. Not with fear, not with shame, but with fire in her eyes and frost in her voice. "To the council," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You called me nothing, and sent me like trash to a man you thought less than dirt. You laughed when I left, expecting me to crawl back broken. But I didn't, and I won't." The signal ended after 97 seconds, enough time to burn into every system that touched it. Enough time to show the galaxy that she was no joke, and somewhere high above the mountain ridges, inside a silver ship cloaked from sight, The council's agents watched in silence, their eyes cold, their orders changing from observe to remove in the abandoned base. Ethan sat beside the transmitter, staring at her. You just made yourself the loudest voice in there. Empire, he said quietly. Zara turned to him, answered without blinking. Good. They had only hours before the council sent more. Not scouts, not spies, enforcers, trained and brutal. Zara moved through the base like she had lived there her whole life, rewiring doors, charging old defense nodes, rerouting power from places Ethan didn't even know existed. He tried to help, but sometimes just watched her work. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was claiming something, a name, a right, a future. The walls of the base hummed with power now, ready but untested, and just before midnight, they arrived, 3 dropships, fast and sharp, cutting through. Clouds like knives. They didn't land far, didn't hide. They wanted her to know they were coming. Zara stood in the hallway holding a long staff built from old tech and fresh anger. She looked at Ethan once, and for the first time, he saw what she truly was. Not a bride, not a servant, not a cast-off, a warrior, born from insult, sharpened by love, fueled by revenge. The first strike came with light, a sonic wave meant to disable her senses. She dropped low, rolled forward, and slammed her staff into the wall. The base answered her, walls lighting up, doors locking, systems screaming. To life, Ethan covered his ears and ducked behind a panel, watching shadows flash across the ceiling like demons. One enforcer burst through the outer corridor, tall and armored, but Zara was faster. She struck first, hit him between the plates, and knocked him to the ground before his weapon could even charge. She moved like lightning, not just trained. Born for this, another came behind, swinging a blade of plasma. Zara blocked with the staff. Sparks flying, metal groaning, and then drove her foot into his chest, sending him flying. Ethan ran to help. Grabbing an old defense gun from a wall panel, he fired at the third attacker before they could reach her back. The blast hit the side of the intruder's helmet, knocking them sideways into a wall of live wires. Electricity danced, and the air smelled like smoke and fury. When it was over, the hallway was quiet again. 3 enforcers down, one gasping, the others still. Zara stood breathing hard, her hands shaking just a little. Ethan moved to her side, blood on his sleeve, not his. "Own, you okay?" he asked. She didn't answer, not right away. Then finally, they didn't send their best. Outside, the dropships had gone dark, not retreated. They were waiting again. The council wasn't done. Not yet. And then, just as the base systems began to cool, the alarm changed tone. Not enemies this time, visitors. Zara looked at the console, confused. A signal was approaching, but it wasn't from her people. It was human. A small ship, rusted, old, but alive, and the pilot? A woman's voice came through the speaker. "This is Captain Lyra of Earth Alliance Patrol. We picked up your broadcast. Are you in need of assistance?" Ethan and Zara stared at each other, stunned. Then Zara stepped forward and pressed the button. "I'm not sure what we need," she said, "but we're not alone anymore." The line stayed open for a few seconds. Then Lyra's voice returned, soft and careful. "You're the one they mocked, the one they sent as a joke." Zara nodded even though the woman couldn't see. "I saw your face," Lyra said. "They called you nothing, but you're becoming everything. We're not many, but we're coming." Zara looked out the broken window at the stars. For the first time they didn't feel so far. And somewhere deep inside her, something changed again. Not rage, not rebellion life. Something new was growing within her, quiet and steady, and not even she knew it yet. The Earth ship broke through the clouds just before dawn. It wasn't large, it wasn't fast, but it flew like it belonged. The Council's dropships didn't fire. They hovered quietly, watching, confused by the new arrival. This wasn't a warship, not even a scout. It was something else. Something unexpected. Just like Zara, inside the mountain base, she stood tall, armored in scraps and truth. Her hand rested on her stomach. Without reason, without thought, it was just a feeling, soft and strange, like a seed beginning to grow. She didn't tell Ethan yet, not because she didn't trust him, but because she didn't know how to speak something so big with such small words. Ethan watched the sky as the Earthship landed, its legs touching down gently on the snowy stone. He stood beside her, silent, tired, but unshaken. This journey had started as a mistake, a cruel trick, a crueler laugh. Now it felt like the beginning of something no one could laugh at again. The ship door opened with a hiss, and out stepped Captain Lyra. She was human, older than Ethan, with silver in her hair and a calm fire in her eyes. She looked at Zara like one might look at a rising storm, both dangerous and needed. "You called for no help," Lyra said. "But we came anyway." Zara didn't smile, not yet. "I didn't think anyone would answer," she replied. Lyra looked at the shattered drones on the ground, the burned walls, the still-breathing enforcer tied to a pillar. "You weren't asking," she said. "You were warning." Behind her, more humans stepped out, some soldiers, some engineers, one holding a medkit. They came not to rescue, but to stand beside. And that made all the difference. The council ships didn't flee, but they didn't move either. They had never expected humans to respond to one voice, especially a voice they had tried to bury beneath a cruel joke. But humans had strange habits. They listened to the quiet ones, and they followed the brave ones. And now, they were watching the one they had once mocked. Zara walked to the center of the field and turned toward the sky. She pressed the old transmitter against her chest and spoke again. "This is no longer a message," she said. "This is a declaration. You will not own my name. You will not erase my steps. You sent me away as a joke. But now I stand with those who answered without laughing." From orbit, the council leaders watched her face again. Some were silent, others cursed. One leaned forward and whispered, "She's pregnant." The room froze. It wasn't a guess, it was truth. Felt in the stillness of the signal. One of their kind had carried life from a human. It was more than scandal. It was proof that something new had been created without permission, without control, a bond they could never break, a future they could never predict. The head general stood and slammed his fist against the screen. "End this," he ordered. "End her." But they had already lost control. Ships from neutral zones began broadcasting support. Small colonies repeated Zara's words on open channels. The laugh they once shared now echoed back at them, twisted and broken, in the snowy valley. Ethan stood behind her. He had heard enough from the human medic, seen the signs in her breath. The way she paused near warmth. "You know," he said quietly, "don't you?" Zara turned to him, not with fear, not even surprise. She simply nodded once. "I carry life," she whispered, "not as a punishment, not as a scandal, but as proof they couldn't break me." Ethan placed his hand over hers, over the place where something small and growing now lived. "No matter what they do," he said, "you've already won." Above them, the council ships turned away, their engines burning silent trails through the clouds. They would not fight now, because they knew the galaxy was no longer laughing with them. It was listening to her. Zara didn't chase them. She stood in the cold wind, surrounded by humans who had come not because they were ordered, but because they believed. And in her chest, under her hand, a new future beat with a rhythm stronger than shame, stronger than tradition, stronger than fear. The joke was over, and she was the one left smiling.